What's up, all my hot fat guys, gals, trans, and non-binary pals? It's Alex Frankel from the Hot Fat Guy Club here with my new friend Timothy. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome, and welcome to the Hot Fat Guy Club podcast to you, Timothy, and to everybody listening. This is another one of our hot fat chats where we talk about dating, dating advice, body image, self-confidence, and the state of ourselves. Timothy, tell us about yourself, tell us about your dating life, and tell us about your relationship to yourself and your body.
Sure, of course. So, hi, my name is Timothy. I am 31 years old. I am single, and I really haven't had much dating experience. Um, I've only had like a couple relationships over, like the longest being 4 months. And I'm really on here to strive for something that's greater. I've always wanted true love, and that's why I'm on here. I currently make content about the lack of body diversity, especially in gay love stories in media. And so that's kind of a big driving factor to a lot of like, because of my own personal experience and just like a passion for more inclusivity in just, in honestly, dating in general.
So, Timothy, I actually want to start with that because I'm a late bloomer bisexual who only came out in the last like 4 years. And while I am quite honestly very familiar with gay culture, something that I have never really experienced was a lot of the horrific fat phobia within the gay community. So if you're open to it, I would love for you to speak on that for a little bit.
And I talk mainly about like my personal experience with that, which is pretty numerous, but I also really want to make sure that I listen to other people's stories of people, of guys that are bigger than me, of guys of just like different size varieties, because I think that everyone deserves a chance to be heard, especially considering I'm more on like the mid-size section. But it really is, it's this like whole kind of personally this invisibility that I feel. It is the eyes go, they look down at you for like half a second, and then they go right above your head like you don't even exist. And the like the just, so it's really just the invisibility that you feel, the lack of matches, the lack of like, I was literally at the bar last night, and I watched this like tall, like thin, muscular guy in like literally just a jockstrap walk in like he owned the place. And I just wanted to wonder. I just wondered like what that would feel like to have that, or to be that, because like it seems so easy. And I think that's really where it comes from, is just like, if I feel like it should be easy for everyone, because everyone deserves love, and your body size should not be this like crazy factor in that.
But that's not love, that's lust. There's a very big difference. Like those people
Okay.
are they're
Sure,
there's
but I
there's
think
there's a
there's
fetishization of that body type for sure.
Sure, but there's also like, but fetishization doesn't mean that it's like good. I don't think. Like, I I wasn't attracted to this person necessarily. I just liked the confidence that he had, and I wanted to be able to have that confidence as well.
Right.
I I I wanted, and I think you're absolutely right. It is lust, but I think, but the having that societal, what's it called, like money, like that societal worth, right, that you are
Yes.
given by other people,
Social
allows you
currency.
to be social currency, exactly the word that I was looking for, thank you, allows you to have more access to the possibility of love. And that is what I think I'm kind of getting at, is that if I had the social currency, I'd be more likely to find love, because I'd have more opportunities to meet a more a wider variety of people.
Interesting. And I do think that just purely based on my own experience and my experience of my other gay friends who, vary in size from the type of people that like the chubby chaser community would be very into to the definition of twinks, otters, bears, all of them. Like it does seem in a in a male dominated sexual space that the um, in general, men are just more shallow than women.
It's so
We are
true.
worse.
Honestly, you were
We are so
absolutely
much
spot on
worse,
there.
and it is really unfortunate that the gay community is seemingly so much more rigid in what their type is, and not wanting to diversify their options, so to speak.
I completely agree. I talk a lot about on my channel. I talk a lot about preferences, and I always say preferences because it's
Mm-hmm.
like this like, is it your preference or is it this like weird requirement, and why is this such a huge factor? Like, people gain and lose and fluctuate, and some people don't and some people do. So it's like, why is that like such a big deal? Like,
Yeah.
is that really like this like, is it like, oh, I you, as long as you hit like this weight point, you are now you're attractive. Like, I'm like, it, that feels so weird to me.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is I have a friend who we both went through significant weight loss journeys at the same time. This particular friend was a much larger person than I was, and it was very interesting that they were someone that was very popular with the chubby chasers, and then as soon as they lost all of that weight, it was like they didn't exist anymore. And
Mm.
again, like there's nothing different but the meat sack. The person is still the same, and it was so difficult watching how much they struggled in that situation because of how like I absolutely think that dating apps exacerbate the issue with this, but it does seem that, like, what can we do to break that binary and to create a more um, largely accepting community where people are more attracted to who you are as a person versus what box you fit into, pun
I
intended. um,
I mean, and isn't that what we've been told for our whole lives through media? Is that I want someone to fall in love with the person, not the body. Like, that was this whole there was is a huge thing that I grew up with, that
right.
we grew up with collectively. I think a lot of people, um, that you fall in love with the person, and that body doesn't matter, and you'll find love, and it's then you grow up and you learn that it's kind of all BS. And because at least in the community, in the gay community,
Yeah.
because it just goes out the window, because I think we break ourselves into these little groups, and then we create, and then I've done not too much research, but a little bit, about like how the bear community kind of came to be. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
of course they came to be because they're trying to find inclusion in their own community that didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to include them. And then of course they're fetishized
Mm-hmm.
by many people, and like, and and is that good? Is that like, I mean, it's good that they're, but it's also like, that's not, anyway, it just gets messy, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think no matter what, in any male dominated space, that's going to be an issue that we face, because there's always going to be, a lot more internalized body image stuff. And I think that when we talk about um, traditional masculinity ideology, which if you, I talk about on every episode, but if you, Tim, specifically hadn't heard me talk about this, it was something, this was a scale invented by a psychologist named Dr. Ronald Levant, and it is a term that I vastly prefer over toxic masculinity, because there's a real definition of what these tenets are. There's 7 pillars of it, and it is: 1, the resistance to all things feminine; 2, the restriction of the expression of caring and vulnerable emotions; 3 through 6 are toughness, dominance, self-reliance, a super high interest in sex; and
Mm.
7 is the um, uh, disdain or hatred for gender, sexual identity, or racial minorities. And anytime you're in hypermasculine spaces, whether it be really far, let's say to the right on the traditional masculinity ideology scale, that perception of the obligation to fulfill that masculine ideal, right? And then on the
Mm-hmm.
other
Yeah.
side, how that plays into how you should look like and masculine body image when we look at, for example, like the superhero ideal physique, right?
Right.
And you look at that type of physique, like who's really attracted to that? Men. They're doing that for other men, right?
Absolutely. I've
Yep.
watched, yes, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's people try to like pull the like reverse like objectification, but because like, oh, women, they draw up these superheroes like this. I'm like, but that's for men. That's this like fantasization of, yeah, anyway. No, completely understand what you get. And
And
also
I
like,
go
go.
ahead.
No.
And so it's this unrealistic level of muscularity, right? And what is has been defined as attractive, and actually this has gotten progressively worse over time. I'm actually trying to find a here we go. There was a paper about the placing men on display and how Men's Health and Men's Fitness, these magazines that were launched in the late 1980s, have progressively increased in their objectification of men and the bodies that they display in terms of how muscular, how lean, and V-shaped they are, which is
Mm,
what men consider more ideal. And that's from a paper that came out in 2005. And there was another really fascinating thing that in Playgirl magazine, they calculated the BMI values of all of the Playgirl centerfolds between 1973 and 1997, and they were positively correlated with their date of publication. So the men's BMIs got smaller and smaller and smaller as time went on.
oof.
But it gets even crazier. It gets even crazier. Um, so I'm just going to read this directly. I wrote my own paper after I read this. So, given this evidence of muscular images of men in the media, it is not surprising that men. Oh wait, I got to go back even further,
You're good.
because there was another comparison of the original version of various action figures, for example, Batman or GI Joe. Their contemporary versions revealed significantly larger necks, chests, arms, forearms, thighs, and calves, but not waists, to the point that they now represent grossly unrealistic proportions. Um, uh, there was another paper that said they noted that the most recent depictions of action figures such as G.I. Joe are so unrealistic that if extrapolated to 70 inches in height, the 1990s version of G.I. Joe would sport larger biceps than any bodybuilder in history.
And that's insane. And
Yeah.
and that's what we're putting out there, and we continue to put out there, and we continue to perpetuate.
Yep.
It's so it's, yeah, no, it's totally a mess.
And it's also super crazy. So, this is another thing from that same paper. In a study of nearly 3,000 adolescents, it was found that 34.7% used protein powders or shakes and 5.9% used steroids. Rates were higher among boys and girls and suggested a fair degree of muscularity concern among boys. They also found that although girls expressed less body dissatisfaction than boys, they perceived more media pressure to lose weight and engage in more eating and exercise strategies to lose weight. Boys felt more pressure from the media to increase muscle tone and engaged in more eating and exercise strategies to increase muscles. So it's really fascinating how both sides of the coin are we're constantly being sold this idea of you at your current state is not good enough.
Yeah.
You at your current state is not good enough. And why do they do that? To make money off of us. But that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other conversation. Um, so let's relate that back to dating and how our own body image and how our own self perception plays into who or what we feel like we're worthy of, right?
Right.
When I was in college, now granted, I was very straight in college, well, uh, outwardly straight in college, and there was one woman in particular that I was madly in love with from afar. I met her before I even moved to New York. I was in New York for a trip. She was another singer, and it was this like beautiful moment. She was singing a tosti song called "Ile Ideale," and the song is literally about like walking into this smoke-filled room and being just instantly enthralled by just the essence of this woman in it, and it was this whole thing. We were all in love with this person,
Yeah.
and I always felt like the only way I would ever have a shot was if I lost a shit ton of weight and I looked a certain way. And that was how I felt in general with everyone that I ever interacted with, always until, 2017, 2018. And
That's
one
real.
thing that was shocking to me always was when I was younger, when I was in college, and before I had cultivated any ability to self validate or be self confident, it always felt like it was a miracle. Like the heavens, God opened up the anus of the heavens and looked down and said, "We will let this one have his penis touched today." And it was always like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Wow." And it was and it was in this phase where I was the secret guy, because people okay, so it does that when I do the thumbs up. Are you seeing that? Do you see the little
Yes,
thumbs
I
up
do.
bubble
I
pop
do.
up?
Yes.
Weird. I gotta not do that. But I was the secret guy because the people I was sleeping with were ashamed of letting it be known that they were sleeping with me, and I was so insecure with my own body that I wouldn't even take my shirt off while we were having sex.
Mm.
And it was only until much later, after I got out of college and when I was older, that I realized, like, oh my God, I was torturing myself for no fucking reason. My standards for myself were so low, and I was so insecure, and I was so desperate for attention and validation from people, and also like my relationship with myself was so unbelievably dysfunctional that I was giving up so much of my time and energy, and quite frankly wasting so much of my time and energy on people that didn't give a shit about me and wouldn't give me the time of day, despite how much time, effort, energy, or orgasms I was giving to them. Right?
Yeah.
They were and like, listen, we've all used people for fun. Like, this is, sometimes there are people that we call them daytime people versus nighttime people.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes there are just people you want to see in the nighttime. Like, it's very clear what the onus of that relationship is, and then there's the
Sure.
daytime people that you want to see in the daytime after the nighttime. Um, but it is really amazing how, and again, this is different in the gay community, but it is really amazing how much of a difference healing your relationship with yourself makes. Because if you're able to be alone with your own thoughts on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're not constantly looking for outward validation or attention from people that are giving you breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole goddamn bread bowl with delicious clam
Yeah.
chowder in it and so much bacon and so many
Yum.
clams. Like,
Yum.
so talk to me about your now tell me about your body image and your relationship with yourself. Let's
Yeah.
start with body image. What was your body image like from a young age? So take me through the timeline. We can spend as much time on this as you want, because this is kind of
Sure.
the meat and potatoes of
Okay.
what we're going to get to here. But like, what was it like in elementary, middle school, high school, college, into your adult life now? What has your top go?
Yeah. So I grew up thin.
Mm-hmm.
I was I mean, it was interesting because I grew up thin in through high school, through middle school, through high school. I look back on pictures and I was thin, but there was this. But I remember always being aware of my weight in a way because
Mm-hmm.
my mom was always on like this diet culture. I grew up in the '90s, early 2000s,
Yep.
so it was
Where are you
it was
from? Where do you
that
live?
a lot of. I grew up moving around a lot,
Okay,
so Rhode Island, Maryland, Washington, Kansas was
got it.
took me through most of my teenage years. Um, so and that was very interesting. And I was observing my older sisters and they how they talked about this.
Mm.
And I remember not wanting to like eat through, I remember in my early 20s, and like I was like, oh no, I need to lose weight even though I was already thin. And I remember, and then it was through, I remember being absolutely in love with this one guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I would see his posts on Twitter, and he would be like, "My dream guy," and it was this like, and I was like, I wanted to conform myself to this, and I was like, maybe if I, I don't know,
Oh, I know
lost weight,
exactly. We all know exactly what you're talking about. We all.
and
I
I
remember
was,
during the MySpace era, this girl I had a crush on in high school. I don't remember exactly what she wrote, but it was like something on the types of people I'm into. It was like no fat guys, and I remember I will. Oh, it's so embarrassing. I remember I sent her a message that said, "Am I too fat?" And she never
um,
responded to it. And I was like,
oh, I
"Oh!"
know that. And so like and it's so weird because I look back because so the guy that I was interested in was actually like either really into thin guys or really into big guys. Like he had
Hmm.
both that, and I was kind of like I was in the middle at that point, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe if I really gain weight or if I really lose weight, I can be attractive to this person. And I remember being so conscious of this, and then I remember even looking back at pictures of in my junior year at my art school that I went to, I remember looking at pictures and I was like, oh, I was like, oh, look at my gut.
Hmm.
And looking at that at the time, I was like, oh no. I was so self-conscious because I was just getting on dating apps, so I didn't really come out until I was 24,
Hmm.
23, 24, and I didn't start dating until I was 24. So had this so I was in a very self-conscious place being on dating apps and
Hmm.
trying to put myself out there. Um,
And that was in the era of
and
dating
then
apps when they were actually halfway decent.
yeah, no, this was 2016,
Hmm.
17, I'd say when this was when I was going on, and it was and but what's interesting is I look back at those pictures that I had on those dating apps now, and I'm like, oh, I was so thin. But I remember feeling like I wasn't. And it was
Hmm.
so weird because now, so then to keep going further in this conversation, it was then the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
I was just about to graduate school. So I finished like the last like 2 months of school in the pandemic. And I started seeking out any opportunity to leave the house, which is mainly drive through and food. And I gained a lot of weight
Hmm.
in those 4 years. Um,
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt you real
and
quick. What was your
I
go-to?
I wasn't dating because it was the pandemic, and also and honestly, and that was when I started realizing how fat phobic the gay community was, and I started seeing like, oh, why are people all about Heartstopper when it's literally the same kind of guys that we've been seeing in gay media since the 70s?
Hmm.
And and that's when I started making content about that. And then and now I have I over the last year I lost almost 40 pounds.
Hmm.
And I I've always found myself attractive, and I always tried to tell myself that I was attractive because, like, in my head, I'm like, I think I'm attractive. Like, factually, my mom calls me handsome, so I'm obviously attractive, right? Um, and I'm like, I look at myself, I'm like, okay, but then I was getting all these like hate comments, and I'm like, oh no, I'm like, why do you think that you could have a chance with this guy? Or it was, all these like little things that got into my head, and I don't know, it was a very weird time, and I fought. I used that energy, um, to keep fighting and making some questionable content that was maybe a little too far in a
Mm-hmm.
way.
How so?
I don't know. Um, where it was like, I mean, part of it was like satire. It was like we shouldn't include skinny guys in gay media at all anymore, and that got a lot of attention
I mean,
because they're like,
listen. I have a my personal stance is if you've never been over 200 and if you've always been the type of person that could walk into any store and buy something off of the rack, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about your problems with your body. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm tired of hearing you complain about
okay,
it. like and of course I don't completely believe that, right? Like we're all deeply insecure, but there's
right,
certain things with certain skinny people and like certain people in my life whenever I hear them complain like, "Oh, I'm fat." Like, "No, you're not. Fuck you. Shut the
yeah,
fuck up. You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about." I have a model colleague who is a really dear friend of mine, and I deeply respect him and his work. And every once in a while, he posts something, and he's like, "Oh, I'm fat." I'm like, "No, you're not. Shut the." And I every time I call him out on it, and I'm a dick to him about it. But it's like, "No, you're not. Shut the fuck up. This has never been a problem for you." Like, "Oh my god,
and
you're 19 abs. You're not. You only have 18 now. Holy shit."
can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm. I mean, like, first of all, I want you to know that I love the content that you make and the journey and what you make and the message that you send out, and I am behind you so
Mm-hmm.
much. But I am that person. I've
Right.
never I've always been able to shop straight sizes,
Mm-hmm.
and I when I talk about this, I try to really acknowledge my own privilege in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and I follow a lot of bigger creators so that I can get their perspectives, because I never want to. And I always try to speak up for people that are bigger
Mm-hmm.
than me because I know that I am, you know, I'm, I wear a medium,
Right.
so I, in a way, I don't qualify to be on
See,
this.
and granted, like this is where it comes into like everything everyone says is a contradiction, right? Because again,
No, and I know what you're saying,
yeah,
and I just want you to know that I fully support that, and that I never
mm-hmm.
want to speak out of turn in my own way.
And
That's
you're not,
good. Okay.
yeah, and you're not,
And because it's interesting because I feel like, and what I've noticed is that there's a lot of it's like the gay community adds 30 pounds to you,
yeah,
no matter what.
mm-hmm.
And that's what I really try to get at is the core, is the how just unfair and how unrealistic it is just to be gay,
Mm-hmm.
and how you're not even seen until until I lose another 30 pounds.
Right, until you're either completely muscle bound or you're the
Right.
opposite. Yeah,
Exactly.
and listen, it's again like the most important let's say the third most important realization I ever had about myself, my own confidence, and my own body was that every single one of us are all deeply insecure. Even the most. I have a friend here in New York City that has been on the cover of Men's Health many times. This person has abs so big, each one has their own individual zip code. Like, and I used to take class with them at one of the gyms they used to work at in New York City. And one of the things I would always do is we would take a shirtless picture together after class. And it was like, one of these things is not like the other, but both of them are equally fucking hot for completely different reasons and to completely
Love
different
that.
people.
Love that.
And it was so funny to me that I went through a pretty significant weight loss journey from 2016 to 2018, where in various different incredibly unhealthy ways, I lost about 175 pounds over the course of those 2 years. And when I went through the fastest, most rapid chunk of that weight loss, and then got to my lowest point in my adult life, which was 213 pounds, I was working at a gym where the sports and fitness models from my current modeling agency would come to class all the time. And it was so funny to me that the people that always made me feel the um, hottest and most confident in my body were those people. Part of it was because I saw how insecure they all were. And this is, not a knock against any of them at all, but to see
Mhm.
the, quite frankly, hell that they lived in all the time trying to maintain that body type and that standard in order to be able to fit into whatever for this job, whatever. And also how supportive they were when all of the guys with all of their 9 million abs that have been, that are the Nike, Under Armour, whatever models have been on the cover of Men's Health and have done all of these things, would like cheer me on when I was taking my shirt off when they all took their shirts off in class, not in a condescending, like, bro, we love your confidence way, but in like a, yeah, fuck yeah, you're one of us, motherfucker way. Right. But
Yeah,
it was so fascinating to talk to them about, their own, how deeply insecure and what the way they see their flaws and the way they perceive them. And I was
yeah,
like, oh my god, these are objectively like from a traditional lens of what society has deemed hot. These are the most traditionally hot people on the face of the planet, and
yeah,
every single one of them is as deeply insecure about their body as I am. They don't
yeah,
give a shit. They don't give a shit about my flaws. They
yeah,
care about theirs. They're not looking at me, pointing, laughing, going, haha. No, they're looking at themselves in the mirror and seeing themselves as me in the mirror.
yeah,
Like they see this when they look at themselves. And there is something so freeing about knowing that,
yeah,
because once you get to that point where you realize, oh no, but adults don't fucking give a shit. It doesn't matter. And the ones that tell you that it does, or the ones that have to say something to you about the state of your meat sack, are quite frankly doing you a favor, saying, I'm a walking red
love
flag and I'm
that.
a piece of shit. Don't waste your time and energy on me.
Yeah,
And
but it's a
the
lot of
way that
people.
and it's a lot of people, and like, listen, there's 8 billion people in the world, and there's 300 million people in the United States, and a lot of them voted for Donald Trump. And that, what does that say about the state of people? you
Right.
know like, there's a lot of dumb fucking piece of shit people out there, and quite frankly, a lot of whose opinions they have a right to have, but don't need to be listened to.
Yeah,
And they're doing you a favor by telling you who they are. Now, as that relates to you and your dating situation, because unfortunately in the gay community you deal what you deal with in terms of the fat phobia and the, just in general, like, weird masculinity issues that theoretically the gay community should have a better handle on. But when it
yeah,
comes to body image and this very, very narrow viewpoint of what people are attracted to and their preferences, as you said, how do we better equip you to deal with that in your own dating life? So what, like,
right.
if we were to distill down, like, what advice you were looking for, what you want, what you need, how to get to the next step where you can, indulge your hopeless romantic self and find the love that you deserve, you want, you need, what can we do to help you with that?
I'm. It's. I guess I'm looking for any advice to just better better put myself out there in the entirety that I am. Because like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about a little bit earlier, it's we are so much more as people than we are the our meat sacks, as you
Mm-hmm.
say, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I see myself as this smart, intelligent, funny, engaging, interesting person. Um and I know that as the core of me. I know that very, very well, and that I'm hot.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's allowing people to see that, or at least projecting it, maybe in a way.
Mm. Hmm.
I don't know how helpful that is.
No, 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 no. So talk me through, like, where do you live again?
I'm just moved to Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. So talk me through your last, like, interaction, cold meeting someone out at a when you're like, specifically someone that you're like hoping to ask out, go on a date with, hook up with, whatever. Talk me through that last interaction. It was specifically one where you made the initial approach to this person.
Um, well, I did just have my first one night stand last night.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was something, and so maybe I'm not, and maybe I'm just, I don't know. So I literally just like, I talked to the guy and I was like, "Hey, do you want to dance?" And he said yes, and then we danced, and then we kissed, and then I brought him home. But
So it was that easy.
it was, I don't know, but then like in my head I'm like, and that happens, but it's like, and yet I still feel, and there are some guys that will
Mm-hmm.
see me, right,
Mm-hmm.
and but it still feels, and then that was like one of like two mildly successful interactions of an entire night
Mm-hmm.
of being looked over and ignored. They're like, and there's like this, and the fear on people's faces, I
Mm,
swear, the fear when people are like, oh my god, he's talking to me, what do I do? I can't let him think that I might like him. That it's the most interesting thing to see on someone else's face, because it's like, god, who do they think they are to talk to me? Let me, my eyes dart, let me talk to someone else, let me make sure that I my eyes go as quickly past them as I possibly can, because I don't want them for a second to think that they're worthy of me.
wow, that's fucked up.
That's 90% of my experience.
I'm at a loss for words, and that happens rarely. That is so fucked up. That wow.
That's the best
Um,
way I can put it, though. I don't know. And that's been my experience here, everywhere. It's
mm,
it's dehumanizing.
yeah. What does it make you feel like when that happens?
Look like crap.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and it feels so like, it feels so like I feel so beyond subhuman in a
Mm,
way. And in this place, in a gay bar where it's supposed to be loving and accepting, it's like this, right? It's like, it's supposed to be this like safe space, right? And that's bull.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh, Jesus Christ. I don't even know what to say to that. Like, first of all, fuck those people. Fuck them. Fucking assholes.
And that's so easy. And I'm with you, right? They are,
Yeah.
absolutely, but it's so many of them. It is
And it
like,
doesn't it and that doesn't change the fact that it fucking hurts when that
it
happens because yeah.
exactly, it hurts, and it's just so many of them. And you're like, well, are they all wrong? Am I? And then you have to like go inside your head and like, they 90% of the people are treating me like this. Am I delusional to think that I'm worthy of this? That I'm worthy of conversation? And you have to like,
What
and right, and you're amazing in this way.
when you go to gay bars, are you usually going to like cruisy hookup bars or what is the
Just
scene like in Columbus? What is the scene like in Columbus?
one, it's very gay, but
Uh-huh.
a lot of people are partnered, and
Okay.
that's maybe, and but it's not, anyway. That, and that's when I, maybe that's just an excuse, and maybe I don't know, but it's, I mean, the club I go to, that I went to last night, was honestly the most basic kind of gay bar club, and
Mhm.
it's it's probably the most average. There are other bars that I've went to that's like, clubby, and like that feels like where they're doing poppers in the bathroom, and you know and
God
it's
knows what
and
else.
and right. And those places are have their own thing, but this feels like a place where I should have felt a little safer, right? This was one of those places that I should have probably felt like I should have felt a little more safe, accepted, what have you. And I've been to this bar a couple times, but it's been that experience, most of the time.
Mm. What are your options of going to other places?
I mean, there's a lot of places, but
Okay.
it doesn't. I've been to many of them, and it doesn't, and it's the same energy.
Yeah.
It's like I've tried to get around since I moved here recently, so I'm trying to like get to know people and and go to different places and honestly I I'm honestly like at this point I'm like I want to give up going to gay spaces because they feel like crap most of the time,
Hmm.
and I don't want to feel like crap when I go to places that I'm just trying to like meet people and have a good time.
Right. I honestly, I feel like this is a pretty universal experience for most places, honestly, because like the rejection's always going to be there. I think there's we can't we can't do anything about the way other people treat us, right? We can't.
No.
An asshole's gonna an asshole. Shit's gonna
Yeah.
come out of it, and I, the and as horrible as that feels in the moment and after the moment, and especially when it happens so consistently, the only thing that we have control over is how we let it affect us. And
Yeah.
I know that's not the answer or the advice that you're looking for, because if it's happening all the time, right? That shit does add up. Now, I wonder, this was something that really helped me when I was like when I was in college, and I it was the summer after my first year in New York City, and I came home to California, and there was just a lot of shit in my family that was in flux. And we had just found out that my dog had cancer and he was very sick, and like there was all this shit going on, and I was supposed to go to this opera festival, and I didn't want to go because I was like, oh, maybe I'll not go and like stay here and deal with this stuff, which I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I went. But when I was there,
Yeah.
I told myself, I was like, I can either be a sad, depressed little mopey fuck for the whole summer, or I can create an alter ego for myself. And none of these people know me. Like, this is a completely new opportunity for me to be the version of myself that I have always dreamt of being. And that was the first time where I was like, I'm gonna be like my one friend who's fearless, right? And I'm gonna harness his energy and kind of in every situation I'm in, ask like what would they do, and then do that thing. And then that evolved into my second semester back at school that next year. I called it my Don Giovanni energy, and I might have mentioned this on another episode. But if you're not
Mm-hmm.
familiar with Don Giovanni, it's a Mozart opera about this guy Don Giovanni who is a fucking prick, but he fucks, and he fucks everyone everywhere all of the time. And his little sidekick Leporello actually keeps a catalog of all of the women that he has slept with and all of the places that he has slept with them. And there is a very famous aria called the catalog aria, where he literally lists off the thousands of people in many different countries throughout Europe. And I was like, oh, I'm going to harness my Don Giovanni energy, which, like, I was 22. I don't recommend that, but it helped. Where that then turned into was when I was going into my like self-confidence journey. The thing that flipped everything for me was on a photo shoot where I didn't know how to act in front of the camera. I was really uncomfortable. I was super self-conscious. And then my photographer, who is now one of my best friends in the world, was like, pretend you're James Dean. And then everything clicked into place. And sometimes, like, maybe it is you have to create an alter ego for yourself going out and like convince yourself that you are this, create this version of yourself that is this like effortless, radiant, charming, magnetic person. And maybe it is that you have to put yourself into a phase where you're making people come to you for whatever reason.
That would be great.
So I think spend some time. Have you ever read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle?
I haven't.
You should. It's great.
Okay.
It's a dense fucking book. It is not a fun read by any means, but it is a very. It's not like the way I used to explain it when I was in my 20s. My voice teacher told me to read it when I was like 18. And I read
Mm-hmm.
it, and I'm like, I don't get a fucking word of this. And then I read it again. I was like, I really don't get it. And I read it again and again and again and again and again and again. And I read it like an evangelical Christian reads the Bible. And I kept fucking reading it. And eventually, after 4 years of reading this book over and over and over again, I was sitting in my car under a highway overpass in Danville, California, waiting for my carpool for one of my colleagues at my fucking summer camp job to show up so we could drive to work together. And I read this one part about these two monks that are on this pilgrimage journey, and they come to this river, and there's this old woman at the river, and she's like, will you please carry me across the river? I need your help. And the monks are on like a silence vow, and they're not supposed to stop or do anything. And the older monk picks the old woman up and carries her across the river, and the younger monk is like freaking the fuck out about it. And then hours go by, and then finally he like breaks his silence. He's like, why did you pick her up? We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to help her. Why did you do that? And the older monk goes, I put her down hours ago, but you've been carrying her this whole time. And all of a sudden, again, it was just like one of those moments where it all just kind of clicked for me, where I like literally felt weight lift off of my shoulders, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it, but I get it, kind of thing. One of
Yeah.
the things he talks about in that book a lot, there's a whole chapter on it, are roles. The roles that we convince ourselves, that we have been told by others that we have to play, and that we have convinced ourselves that we have to play. And it is very important to parse through the roles that the ego or the unconscious mind creates for us and tells us who we have to be versus who we actually are. But I am a very firm believer in what has worked for me, while keeping all of that in mind, is in order to get myself to the next phase of something, I do have to kind of create that character of who I want to be, who I want to get to. I call it the Rachel Dolezal effect. Do you remember Rachel Dolezal?
Sorry.
She is a white woman who was, if I remember correct, I'm going to look it up so I get it exactly correct. But basically, this was a huge. She was an American former college instructor and activist known for presenting herself as a black woman despite being born to white parents. She is a former National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter president. She was the NAACP chapter president in Spokane, Washington from 2014 until 2015. And that story broke when they find out that this white woman was cosplaying as an African-American woman for a very long time. So I call it the Rachel Dolezal effect of, if you tell yourself you're a lamp 10,000 times a day, if you do that for a year, eventually you're going to believe you're a lamp. So that's my stupid joke. But
I got it.
Create that persona for yourself. Spend some time with it. Parse through like the things that you have been made to feel that maybe you have internalized from other people, and then find the opposite side of that coin and how you can kind of mold yourself into this different version, this future you that is magnetic, instead of seeking the attention and validation from these shit people who don't deserve your time, your effort, your energy.
Yeah.
And let them come to you. And if it doesn't work, well, that's great, because we're going to talk again in 6 weeks or like 2 months and see how all of this goes.
Okay.
Because I'm going to do follow-ups with everyone that I do this for, because I'm really curious about how this ends up working, right? And am I full of shit? Am I a fraud, or did this help, right? And also, like, we're friends now. I want to know what's going on in the process. But I think for you have so many tools, and you're so charming, and you're so nice, and you're so sweet. I want you to create this future version of yourself. And not, my old football coach always used to say, opinions are like butts, everyone has them and they all stink. He was an asshole, but that was a good quote. Spend some time with who that person that attracts other people is, who that future version of Tim is, and what it is about you that will be magnetic and, effervescent, and is that like charge in the room that people will at a minimum take notice of, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. No,
You're
I
welcome.
love that. That's so. I think, in a way, I've tried to do that, but I think I'm not. I haven't been fully invested in that kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to really just go into it and do it wholly
Yeah.
and really embrace this, debonair character
Right.
that I deserve to be.
Mm-hmm. And like, you're in a new city and a new place now. Nobody knows you. You get to be whoever you want to be now.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing. It's not like and like, this is a disclaimer I say to everybody, because like everything I say, if you don't live in New York City, has to be taken with a somewhat grain of salt, purely because, especially when I'm talking to straight men, because like purely because the dating pool is significantly larger here. There's just a million fucking people, and it is a lot easier in a large city to be a new person and like enter new circles, right? The world is very
Right.
small, and the world is shockingly small, like shockingly small. But when you're in an actually small place, like I spoke to another person here who's from Laramie, Wyoming, and I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man. So take everything I'm saying with a huge grain of salt, because there's just a lot. The dating pool is a lot smaller for you there than it is for me in New York City. But these things are still very valid and can still be very helpful. It's just that there are just, quite frankly, less people to attempt it with.
Yes.
Um, but, you know, uh, buy A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle, you owe me. But no, thank you for the book. It's great. And read it, read it again, 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 and create that character, that future version of Tim that you're working towards. And it's a version of you that you get to be really proud of and that you get to invent every day.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do that. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. And if there's anybody listening who wants to slide into Tim's DMs, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me primarily. I am at Rain Gay on TikTok. That's where you can find me. I am, I have a second channel, but I don't never use it. So yeah, Rain Gay on TikTok.
Great. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time, your honesty, and your vulnerability. You, sir, are indeed a hot fat guy. And to all of the hot fat guys, gals, trans, and non binary pals listening, I love you, you sexy, hot motherfuckers. Go be hot as shit. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, you hot fat fucks.